A Quiet Sky over Braunschweig. A look behind the scenes of one of history's boldest military tricks. On March 15, 1944, over Braunschweig, Germany, Captain James "Red" Holt, a P-47 Thunderbolt pilot, sharply banks his plane, scanning the vast empty sky above the bomber stream. 800 B-17 flying fortresses, a buzzing swarm, relentlessly press toward their targets. Each carries 10 young Americans and enough ordnance to level an entire city block. Somewhere in that gray expanse, German fighters lurk. Holt feels their presence. The statistics are unforgiving. Since early January, the 8th Air Force had lost 284 heavy bombers. That's 2,740 lives that would never return home. Escort fighters like Holt's 359th Fighter Squadron couldn't be everywhere at once. The Luftwaffe knew this perfectly. They had developed a new deadly tactic. Ignore the escorts, attack the stragglers. Damaged bombers, limping behind the formation. Crippled birds with feathered props and smoking engines. Easy prey. Yesterday, Holt watched helplessly as 6 Focke-Wulf FW-190s swarmed a damaged B-17 called Memphis Belle II. The bomber lasted only 43 seconds. Today's intelligence briefing reported the same pattern in 37 missions. German fighters specifically targeted battle-damaged planes, avoiding healthy ones, refusing to engage fighter screens. The math was simple and brutal. When fighters escorted healthy bombers, the Germans waited. When bombers showed damage, the Germans pounced, and they did so 3 miles from where American escort fighters were flying. By the time Holt's squadron reached the attack site, it was always over. "We're protecting the wrong planes," Holt muttered into his oxygen mask. What he didn't know, what no one in the 359th Fighter Squadron knew, was that in exactly 4 hours, a 24-year-old artist from Brooklyn, with no military aviation experience whatsoever, would sketch an idea on a napkin that would turn this deadly game on its head. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The idea was so simple, so audacious, that when he first presented it, his squadron commander would call it the dumbest thing I've ever heard. An idea involving paint, theater, and the oldest trick in warfare, turning your strength into a weakness. Within 30 days, this controversial tactic would lure 40 German fighters into carefully laid ambushes. It would save approximately 180 American bombers. It would violate at least 3 articles of the Geneva Convention and would remain classified for the next 47 years. This is the story of how one squadron began painting their planes to look damaged and turned the hunters into the hunted. What was this trick that made the Germans attack their supposed saviors? How did ordinary paint change the course of the air war and save hundreds of lives? And why did this tactic remain a secret for almost half a century? Imagine. You're flying in a dogfight. Your plane is hit, engine smoking, and the enemy, like a hungry wolf, circles, waiting for you to weaken. Is that familiar feeling of hopelessness when there seems to be no way out? Many of us have faced situations where circumstances conspired against us, and we felt like easy prey. But what if I told you that even in the most desperate positions, you can find something to turn your vulnerability into a powerful weapon? Today, we will reveal a secret that met the expectations of those on the brink and showed that even in the most challenging conditions, you can turn the tide. The crisis began long before March 1944. It started with a German pilot named Hermann Josef Pip Priller, who in December 1943 realized what Allied command had not yet understood. Damaged bombers are predictable. "A healthy bomber fights," Priller wrote in his tactical doctrine, circulated within JG-26. "A crippled bomber runs. It separates from the pack. Its escort cannot protect what it cannot reach. We do not hunt the strong, we finish off the weak." The results of this strategy were devastating. In January 1944 alone, 73% of bombers lost over Germany were stragglers, aircraft that had fallen out of formation due to battle damage, mechanical failures, or wounded crew members. The Luftwaffe developed Wolfpack tactics, specifically designed to exploit this vulnerability. German fighters circled at a distance, observing, waiting for characteristic signs: a smoke trail, feathered propellers, planes losing altitude, and then they would strike. American Fighter Command tried every conceivable method. They assigned rescue fighters to escort damaged bombers home, but the Germans simply waited until these fighters reached their fuel limits and turned back. They increased fighter patrols around bomber routes. The Germans attacked in the gaps, exploiting every opportune moment. They developed new radio protocols for damaged aircraft to call for help. The Germans jammed the frequencies, depriving the Americans of their last hope of salvation. Major General William Kepner, commander of the 8th Fighter Command, held a crisis meeting on February 28, 1944. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Gentlemen, we have a problem that cannot be solved by tactics alone, he declared. The enemy has turned our wounded into bait. Every crippled bomber becomes a death sentence for its crew and for the fighters we send to save it. All experts agreed that the solution lay in preventing damage in the first place. Better armor, tighter formations, more defensive firepower. But these were engineering solutions that would take months or years. Meanwhile, men were dying every day. And here arises the question: in conditions where traditional methods are powerless, how do you find an unconventional solution that saves lives? Squadron commanders tore their hair out in despair. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dickman of the 359th Fighter Squadron, in a fit of desperation, threw his cap across the briefing room after losing 3 fighters trying to defend one damaged B-24. "They're using our wounded as traps," he said. "We see a limping bomber, rush to help, and suddenly we're outnumbered 4-1 with half our fuel already gone. It's ingenious. It's ruthless. And I don't know how to stop it." This cry from the heart leads us to the next question. What was this ingenious and ruthless strategy that the Americans couldn't unravel? The consensus among tactical experts was clear. There was no counter to this strategy other than to abandon the stragglers. Several senior officers quietly suggested implementing a survival of the fittest policy. Damaged planes should be left to fend for themselves. The proposal reached General Dwight D. Eisenhower's desk. He wrote one word on it in red pencil: never. But noble sentiments don't save lives. The losses continued. By mid-March, bomber crews feared being damaged more than being shot down. "At least if you're destroyed, it's quick," they would say. But being hit means a slow, 30-minute chase through hostile skies, while German fighters take turns shooting pieces off your plane, and your friends die trying to reach you in time. The psychological damage was palpable. The number of aborted missions grew. Pilots reported battle damage that ground crews couldn't find. Some crews requested transfers to the Pacific Theater, where at least the enemy fought fair. And here we return to our main mystery. In conditions of total despair and complete powerlessness in the face of enemy tactics, how did one man find a solution that no one expected? Stay with us to find out how this story ended and how the most unexpected idea changed everything. The silent battle over European skies. The escalating air war over Europe demanded courage, but also cunning. The Germans, demonstrating skill and ruthlessness, avoided direct confrontation, preferring to attack damaged bombers that lagged behind the formation. These predators, like sharks, smelled blood, and for them, a crippled plane was easy prey. American pilots returned from missions with hollow eyes, watching their comrades fall victim to this insidious tactic. How do you fight an enemy who refuses fair combat? It was at this critical moment that a man whose biography, it seemed, did not portend military feats, entered the scene. Daniel Weiss, a 24-year-old technical sergeant in the 359th Fighter Squadron, a former commercial artist, had no combat experience and had never flown a fighter plane. His mundane tasks included servicing landing gear hydraulics and applying kill marks to fuselages. What set Weiss apart? It was his Cooper Union art degree, 3 years of experience creating deceptive advertising campaigns, and most importantly, an unclouded outsider's perspective, free from established military doctrines. It was this fresh perspective that allowed him, on March 15, sitting in the officers' club, to sketch an idea on a cocktail napkin that would change the course of the air war. Weiss wasn't aiming for global changes, he simply wanted the pilots to stop returning with that ghostly expression in their eyes. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Born in Brooklyn to immigrant kosher deli owners, Weiss had dreamed of being an artist since childhood, drawing on butcher paper. However, the harsh reality of the Great Depression led him to the J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency, where he created ads for Pond's Cream and Lucky Strike cigarettes. His specialty was the art of transformation. He knew how to make ordinary products look extraordinary, persuading people to see what he wanted them to see. When Pearl Harbor struck, Weiss tried to become a pilot, but failed the eye test due to mild color blindness. An attempt to become a bombardier also proved unsuccessful. He was eventually assigned as a chief mechanic, which Weiss compared to training as a Rembrandt and then being hired to paint houses. Nevertheless, he was extremely meticulous and perfectly understood the difference between the appearance of things and their true nature. Upon the plane's return from missions, Weiss was the one who inspected the damage, coordinated repairs, and returned the machines to service. In 6 months, he learned to read battle damage like a language. He could unerringly identify what flak bursts looked like on aluminum skin, how bullet holes clustered, which damage was fatal and which was merely simulated. On the evening of March 15th, against regulations, he sat at a corner table in the officers' club, where his presence was tolerated for his popularity and ability to keep company with pilots reeling from the day's losses. Captain Holt, already quite drunk, spoke of a B-17 that couldn't be saved. "They smell wounded planes," Holt said, "like sharks smell blood. How do you fight an enemy who won't engage unless they have the advantage?" Weiss listened with half an ear, continuing to sketch on a napkin, an old nervous habit. He drew a P-47 but added theatrical battle damage, engine smoke trails that looked not quite real, bullet holes that were too symmetrical. It was a caricature, a cartoon image of damage. Suddenly his pencil froze. He stared at the napkin, at the fake damage he had drawn. "What if we make them think they do have the advantage?" Weiss said quietly. Holt didn't hear him. Weiss repeated louder, "Captain, what if we make them think they do have the advantage now?" Holt looked up, annoyed. "What are you talking about, Sergeant?" Weiss slid the napkin across the table. "Your P-47 flying escort, but painted to look damaged, with a smoke trail. Theatrical smoke, not real. Painted bullet holes, stage wounds. Flying like it's crippled, lagging behind, looking weak." Holt's eyes narrowed. "It's camouflage in reverse. It's a decoy," he said. "And when they come for what they think is easy prey—" Weiss drew 6 more P-47s, diving from above. The trap snaps shut. Holt was silent for a long time. "So you want to turn escort fighters into decoys?" "I want to turn our strengths into their weaknesses," Weiss said. "They hunt wounded animals. We'll give them a wounded animal with teeth." The next morning, Weiss expected ridicule in the briefing room. Instead, Lieutenant Colonel Dickman listened silently to the entire presentation. Then he uttered 6 words that changed everything. "Show me. You have 48 hours." Weiss commandeered a corner of Hangar 7 and 3 P-47s scheduled for routine maintenance. He assembled his team. Corporal Tommy Chen, a former Disney animator, Private First Class Marcus Wright, a theatrical makeup artist from Harlem, and Staff Sergeant Irene Kowalski of the Women's Army Corps, who worked in her father's auto body shop in Detroit. What they created over the next 2 days was part art, part engineering, part stage magic. First challenge. Painted damage wouldn't fool anyone up close. Weiss needed three-dimensional realism that worked from 500 yards. Wright suggested acetate cellulose sheets, a clear theatrical gel, thermally formed and painted to look like damaged aluminum, then attached with quick-release fasteners. From a distance, they were indistinguishable from real battle damage. Up close, they popped off in seconds. Second challenge. Smoke trails. Real engine damage produces thick black smoke. Weiss reverse-engineered German smoke generator systems from a captured Bf-109, creating a drop pod that produced theatrical smoke on command. White or black, controlled from the cockpit. The smoke looked wrong to an experienced mechanic, but perfect to a fighter pilot, 3,000 yards away deciding whether to attack. Third challenge. Selling the illusion through behavior. A damaged plane doesn't just look different, it flies differently. Weiss created a checklist of actions: reduce speed by 40 mph, gradually lose altitude, occasionally feather one prop, fly slightly out of balance. Captain Holt practiced this technique, flying like a perfect imitation of a crippled plane while maintaining full combat readiness. On March the 17th, they presented all three modified P-47s to Lieutenant Colonel Dickman. He walked around them, examining every detail. He touched the fake damaged panels. He watched the smoke generators operate. He said nothing. Finally, he stated, "This violates the laws of war, false flag operations, flying under false pretenses." "We're not changing our identifying marks," Weiss interrupted, then remembered his rank. "Sir, we're still clearly American planes. We're just exaggerating our condition." "This is completely against doctrine," Dickman continued. "Fighters are offensive weapons, not decoys." "Sir, with all due respect, the Germans turned our bombers into decoys," Captain Holt said. "We're just returning the favor." Video script, Optical Deception, How an Artist Changed Air Warfare. Joe Class 015. Imagine waking up every day feeling cornered. Your efforts yield no results, and the enemy always seems one step ahead, exploiting your vulnerability. Have you ever wondered, what if you could turn your weaknesses against those who exploit them? What if what seems like your downfall was actually your greatest weapon? 015, 030. Today, we delve into a story that forever changed perceptions of warfare, proving that the sharpest mind is sometimes more important than the most powerful weapon. We'll tell you about a man who, despite lacking combat experience, managed to turn the tide using his unusual talent. How did he do it? And why did his ideas seem insane, even to his own command? 030, 045. Have you ever felt like your skills are underestimated, that you're capable of more than circumstances allow? This story about Daniel Weiss, a former advertising executive who found himself in the heart of war, will show how unconventional thinking can pave the way to victory, where traditional methods fail. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. 45. 1. Weiss wasn't a military strategist, but he had a profound understanding of human psychology and the art of illusion. His advertising experience, where he masterfully created false impressions and manipulated perception, proved invaluable. He knew how to make people see what he wanted them to see, and this became the key to his revolutionary idea. 1 Science 1:15. How did an ordinary artist, who couldn't even pass a pilot's eye test, propose a solution that changed air combat tactics? His path was thorny. From dreams of painting to creating ads for Pond's cream. But it was this experience, seemingly far removed from war, that gave him a unique perspective. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be imagined. 1:15, 1:30. Weiss, like a detective, studied every scar on the returning planes, every puncture and every scratch. He learned to read these damages like an open book, distinguishing fatal wounds from those that were merely superficial. This knowledge became the foundation for his daring plan, a plan designed to deceive the enemy itself. 1:30, 1:45. The idea came to him in the officers' club during a conversation with Captain Holt, who bitterly recounted losses. Weiss, sketching on a napkin, suddenly realized, what if instead of being victims, they became predators themselves? What if they could create the illusion of vulnerability to lure the enemy into a trap? This simple yet brilliant thought became the starting point for a grand deception. 45, 2. What if we make them think they do have the advantage now? This question, posed by Weiss, revolutionized the concept of warfare. His proposal seemed absurd, to turn escort fighters into decoys. But there was method in this madness. He proposed using American strengths to expose German weaknesses, luring them into a trap where they would face not easy prey, but a deadly struggle. 2:15. Lieutenant Colonel Dickman, to Weiss's surprise, did not immediately reject the idea. 6 words. Show me. You have 48 hours, marked the beginning of an experiment that would either fail miserably or change the course of the war. Weiss assembled a team of equally unconventional thinkers, a Disney animator, a theatrical makeup artist, and a mechanic from an auto body shop. Together, they set about creating an unprecedented military illusion. 2:15, 2:30. The first challenge was the most difficult, creating damage that looked realistic from a distance but could be easily removed. The solution came from a theatrical makeup artist, heat-formed and painted cellulose. Acetate sheets mimicked damaged aluminum. From afar they were indistinguishable from actual battle damage, yet up close they vanished in seconds. This was the initial step toward crafting the perfect deception. But how could they simulate convincing smoke? After studying German smoke generators, Weiss designed a suspended container capable of producing theatrical smoke of any color at the pilot's command. This smoke, which might have seemed unrealistic to a mechanic up close, was perfect for an enemy pilot at a distance, making a decision to attack. Finally, and most importantly, how could they make an aircraft not only look damaged, but also behave accordingly? Weiss developed a detailed list of actions, reducing speed, gradually losing altitude, even simulating a feathered propeller. Captain Holt masterfully perfected this technique, transforming his P-47 into the ideal lure while maintaining full combat readiness. This was military theater at its finest. On March 17th, Weiss and his team presented their modified P-47s to Lieutenant Colonel Dickman. He meticulously inspected every detail, touched the fake damage, and observed the smoke generators in action. His words were full of doubt. This violates the laws of war, false flag operations, flying under false pretenses. But Weiss and Holt were prepared for this. They knew that sometimes to win, you had to bend the rules. "We're not changing our markings," Weiss replied. "We're simply exaggerating our condition." Holt added, "The Germans turned our bombers into bait. We're just returning the favor." This was more than just a new tactic. It was a challenge to established norms, an act of audacity poised to turn the tide of the air war. The art of deception had become a new weapon in the fight for the skies. Dickman sank back into thought. Finally, he turned to his operations officer and asked, "How long will it take to train an entire squadron in these methods?" 48 hours, sir," came the reply. "Do it. But no one is to speak of this outside this hangar, not to other squadrons, not to intelligence, not to God himself. If it works, we'll expand it. If not, he glanced at Weiss. Sergeant here will spend the rest of the war painting latrine numbers. Weiss swallowed hard. Understood, sir. One more thing, Dickman added. I want to fly lead on the first mission. Rumors spread with a speed unbecoming of classified information. Within 72 hours, Colonel Hub Zemke of the 56th Fighter Group learned of this insane decoy scheme in the 359th Squadron. He personally arrived to see it with his own eyes. Zemke watched a demonstration flight. 3 damaged P-47s limped across the sky, smoking and wobbling. 8 more P-47s circled at 15,000 feet, remaining invisible from below. The decoys worked flawlessly. Wounded birds, irresistible targets. When they landed, Zemke cornered Lieutenant Colonel Dickman. Does 8th Fighter Command know about this? Not yet, because they would immediately shut it down. That's my assessment. Yes, sir. Zemke pondered the situation. He was the most successful fighter commander in the European theater of operations with 75 confirmed kills, a legend who had rewritten tactical doctrine. His opinion carried weight, capable of making or breaking careers. I want in, Zemke said. This is either genius or a court-martial. Either way, I want my group involved before headquarters buries it. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. On March 20th, a demonstration was held that would decide everything. Fighter Command sent Major General William Kemptner and a staff of 12 officers to evaluate the program before authorizing or prohibiting its use. They gathered in the briefing room at Bodom. The room was packed. Squadron commanders, intelligence officers, the Army Air Force's legal department, and one very nervous technical sergeant who was beginning to regret every life choice that had led him to this moment. Weiss presented the concept: fake damage, theatrical smoke, flight simulation, and ambush tactics. He used terms like deceptive engagement protocol and asymmetric response strategy because they sounded more military than we're going to trick them with paint and lure them into a trap. The legal officer immediately interrupted him. This constitutes perfidy under Article 23 of the Hague Convention. The use of false distress signals to lure the enemy is expressly forbidden. We are not using distress signals, Weiss countered. We are not flying a false flag. We are using camouflage. Deceptive camouflage, but camouflage nonetheless. Camouflage makes you less visible. This makes you a liar. The room erupted. 16 officers spoke at once, voices rising. Some supported it. Anything to stop the losses. Others condemned it. We are not Nazis. We do not use deception. The argument split along predictable lines. Combat officers wanted to try it. Staff officers wanted to bury it. General Kemptner allowed the debate to continue for 3 minutes. Then he stood, and the room fell silent. Gentlemen, I have a question for the legal officer. When the Germans developed tactics specifically targeting our damaged aircraft, did they violate any convention? No, sir. Attacking the wounded is unsportsmanlike, but not illegal. And when we paint our planes to look damaged, are we engaging in deception? Sir, like any camouflage scheme in military history. This is different because it makes the enemy uncomfortable, not us. Kemptner's voice was icy. The Germans turned our wounded into deadly traps. They used compassion as a weapon. And you're telling me we can't respond because it's unsportsmanlike. The legal officer had no reply. Kemptner turned to Captain Holt. You've flown this profile. Can you maintain combat effectiveness? Yes, sir. Full defensive capability. Full offensive capability. We're just playing a role. Colonel Zemke, your assessment. Zemke stood. Sir, this is the first truly innovative tactical development I've seen since arriving in the theater. For 18 months, Fighter Command has been reactive, responding to German innovations, adapting to German tactics. This is proactive. This will make them react to us. I recommend immediate authorization for limited trials." Kemptner slowly nodded. "Limited trials, 3 missions. If losses exceed standard escort missions, we abort. If we don't achieve a significantly better kill ratio, we abort. If the Germans adapt and the advantage disappears, we abort." He looked directly at Dickman. "But if this works, Colonel, I want every fighter group in the 8th Air Force trained in this protocol within 30 days. A silence fell over the room. "And one last thing," Kemptner said, looking at Weiss. "Sergeant, you're the artist who designed this." "Yes, sir." "Do you understand that if this fails, people will die because of your idea?" Weiss's voice was firm. "Sir, people die every day because we have no ideas. I'd rather try something than nothing." Kemptner almost smiled. "Proceed." Let's go back to March 1944 and a mission that would prove if genius and madness were one and the same. On March 22, 1944, Mission 250 targeted the ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt. The 309th Fighter Squadron took off with 12 P-47 Thunderbolts. 4 of them were modified decoys, 8 were hunters. Captain Holt led the decoy flight. His P-47, painted with fake bullet holes along the fuselage and equipped with smoke generators, took up a position 2,000 yards behind the bomber stream. He throttled back to 100 mmWp semi, dangerously slow for combat, but perfect for simulating battle damage. He activated the smoke generator. A white vapor trail streamed from his engine cowling, visible for miles. Imagine, you're flying in the sky, and suddenly you see it, wounded, smoking, almost helpless. Your heart tightens with the anticipation of an easy victory, doesn't it? But what if it's not just a plane, but a deadly trap, meticulously designed to lure you into the jaws of destruction? How did one audacious idea, born of desperation, manage to turn the tide of air battles and make the enemy dance to a different tune? And why couldn't even the most seasoned strategists immediately accept this seemingly insane concept? In this video, we'll delve into the history that changed the rules of engagement in the air, learn about the tactics that forced the Germans to reconsider their adversaries, and discover how one bold idea became the key to survival. Prepare to learn how deception, camouflage, and cunning became the most potent weapons in the hands of those who dare to think outside the box. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Well, the introduction is covered. So what's next? Next, we'll dive into the very heart of this incredible strategy, which, like an invisible thread, connects every moment of the narrative. You won't notice the transition from one segment to the next, as each new thought will be a logical continuation of the previous one, creating a unified, breathtaking tapestry of history. This isn't just a collection of facts, but a complete journey where each new twist only heightens the intrigue and the desire to know what happens next. How did this idea, initially met with such skepticism and even accusations of perfidy, managed to break through? Officers, divided into 2 camps, some seeing genius, others a path to court-martial, faced a difficult choice. General Kemptner, whose wisdom and composure played a decisive role, managed to turn the tide of the discussion by asking one simple yet piercing question. When the Germans turned our wounded into deadly traps, they used compassion as a weapon. And you're telling me we can't respond because it's unsportsmanlike? This question became the catalyst that changed everything. It showed that it wasn't about fair play, but about survival, about protecting lives. And it was here, at this turning point, that the path to limited trials began. Trials that would either confirm the genius of this tactic or bury it forever. So, how did events unfold after this fateful decision? And what results did the first missions bring when the decoy planes first took to the skies, ready to deceive the enemy? Quietly, they flew. Have you ever wondered what the most terrifying thing in an aerial dogfight is? Not bullets, not explosions. The most terrifying thing is deception. The cunning that makes you believe one thing, only for reality to be something else entirely. Today we'll delve into a story that revolutionized aerial combat, showing how a lie can become the most powerful weapon. How did American pilots make Luftwaffe aces doubt their own eyes? How did ordinary planes transform into deadly decoys? And why did this tactic change the course of the war in the skies over Europe? Get ready, because what you're about to learn will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about air combat tactics. At 24,000 feet, Lieutenant James Fisher watched Holt's actions carefully. His binoculars captured every movement. "He looks genuinely hit," Fisher radioed. "If I didn't know better, I'd call in rescue." They didn't have to wait, however. At 1:47 p.m., German radar operators reported a damaged American fighter straggling from formation and rapidly losing altitude. The report immediately reached Jagdgeschwader 1. Hauptmann Heinz Baer, a celebrated ace with 179 kills, scrambled 6 Bf-109s. This was standard doctrine: easy prey, minimal risk, an excellent opportunity to boost morale. Baer spotted Holt from 8 miles away. The smoking P-47 swayed slightly, slowly descending towards the cloud cover. It was textbook behavior for a damaged aircraft. Baer didn't hesitate. He led his formation into an attack position. 6 fighters against 1 crippled American. At 12,000 feet, Holt continued his charade. He saw the German formation above and behind him, moving into a perfect killing position. His right hand rested on the throttle. His left gripped the control stick tightly. Every instinct screamed, "Break away, run, fight!" But instead, he continued to play the wounded bird, fully trusting the 8 P-47s he couldn't see, but who were watching the entire scene unfold. The Germans dove. Baer lined up his attack, closing the distance to 400 yards. Easy pickings. He had downed 179 Allied planes. This was supposed to be his 180th. But then Lieutenant Fisher's voice crackled over the radio. "Now!" Holt slammed the throttle forward. The crippled P-47 burst into full power. The smoke generator cut off, and suddenly he was no longer wounded. He transformed into a 2,500 horsepower fighter, accelerating to 400 MEP and rapidly gaining altitude. The fake damaged panels ripped away in the airstream. In 3 seconds, he went from prey to predator. The Germans had exactly 1 second to realize what was happening before 8 P-47s roared out of the sun at 450 mph, operating on emergency combat power. Baer broke hard right, but it was too late. Fisher's first burst hit the left wing of his Bf-109, tearing apart the control surfaces. Baer was too good to die easily. He managed to execute a controlled crash landing in a field near Osnabrück, but his wingman, Lieutenant Werner Schmidt, was not so fortunate. 2 P-47s simultaneously converged on him. His fighter disintegrated. The ambush lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, 4 German fighters were destroyed, 1 damaged, 1 pilot killed, 3 captured, and 2 escaped. American losses: 0. Not a single bullet hole in any P-47. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Gun camera footage was studied for hours by intelligence officers who couldn't believe what they saw. A damaged plane that wasn't actually damaged, an ambush in the open sky, Germans flying directly into a trap. They should have noticed. But how? That's what we'll discuss now, as we delve into the details of this incredible tactic that made the enemy doubt reality itself. Within 48 hours, the pilot involved in the incident was interrogated by Luftwaffe intelligence. His report was immediately disseminated to all German fighter groups. It stated, "American fighters are now employing deception tactics. Aircraft displaying battle damage may be fully combat-capable ambush decoys. Extreme caution is advised when engaging seemingly damaged adversaries." But this warning came too late. The tactic was already spreading like wildfire. March 24th, 3 decoy missions over Bremen. 6 German fighters destroyed, 2 probable. American losses, 1 P-47 with minor damage from anti-aircraft fire. This was just the beginning. March 27th, 2 decoy missions covering B-24 bombers flying to Mannheim. 8 German fighters destroyed. American losses, 0 again. March 29th, a massive coordinated operation. 6 squadrons were now trained in decoy tactics. 12 decoy aircraft flew with the bomber stream. The Luftwaffe lost 17 fighters. American bomber losses were the lowest in 3 months. This was the turning point. The data became impossible to ignore, and it spoke for itself. Before decoy tactics, March 15, 1944, average bomber losses per mission were 5. 2%. Fighter loss ratio was 1. 3.1 in favor of the Germans. Straggler survival was only 27%. After decoy tactics, March 22nd, April 15th, 1944, average bomber losses per mission dropped to 2, 8%. The fighter loss ratio shifted to 4, 7.1 in favor of the Americans, and straggler survival soared to 73%. This was a staggering success. The 39th Fighter Squadron alone claimed 40 confirmed kills in 30 days, a feat typically achieved over 6 months. More importantly, bomber crews reported that German fighters became hesitant, reconsidering attacks and breaking off engagements that would previously have been aggressive pursuits. A German pilot, Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann, captured on April 3rd, told interrogators, "We can no longer trust our eyes. What looks weak may be strong. What looks wounded may be a trap. We are told to be aggressive. But how can we be aggressive when aggression leads to ambush? They have turned our tactics against us." The psychological impact matched the tactical success. German fighters began completely avoiding aircraft that appeared damaged, which meant that truly damaged bombers survived more often. The Luftwaffe's Wolfpack doctrine, so effective for 4 months, crumbled in 3 weeks. By April 15th, every fighter group in the 8th Fighter Command had at least one squadron trained in decoy operations. The tactical innovation spread to the 9th Air Force, then to the Royal Air Force, and later to the Mediterranean Theater of Operations. Technical crews became true experts at applying theatrical damage that could be quickly removed and reapplied between missions. And throughout it all, Technical Sergeant Daniel Weiss oversaw a secret workshop in Hangar 7, training crews in the art of deception, teaching them how to make strength look like weakness, teaching them that sometimes the best camouflage isn't to hide, but to lie. Imagine yourself in the thick of battle, surrounded, with seemingly no way out. Your aircraft is damaged, and your chances of survival are minimal. What do? Hide. Fight to the last. Or, what if there's a third way, a path where you don't hide, but lie, where your visible weakness becomes your deadliest weapon? How is this possible? And why did this seemingly simple tactic, devised by an ordinary artist, save hundreds of lives while remaining classified for decades? Have you ever felt underestimated? Your true capabilities unseen while your weaknesses are on full display? Today, we'll tell the story of how precisely this became the key to survival and victory, changing the course of air battles. Learn how appearing weak when you're strong is sometimes the best way to be strong. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. As we continue our narrative, we'll see how the profound impact of this single tactical innovation is estimated to have saved the lives of 180 bomber crew members in just 1 month. The story will then move into the post-war era to reveal the long-term consequences of this strategy. When the smoke of war cleared and the final statistics were compiled after victory in Europe Day, a story emerged that would become a case study for tactical manuals for generations to come. Between March 22 and May 8, 1945, squadrons employing new deception tactics achieved staggering results. 247 confirmed enemy aircraft shot down. The kill ratio was an incredible 6, 2.1 in their favor, an unprecedented figure among all tactical innovations in the European theater of operations. Remarkably, approximately 890 bomber crew members survived missions that, by all statistical calculations, should have been their last. This was a direct consequence of reduced aggression from German pilots, deceived by the cunning decoy tactic. But behind the cold numbers, there are always human stories, which we will now explore. More important than any statistical summaries and dry reports have always been and remain the fates of the people directly involved in those events. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dieckmann, the very man who gave the green light to the first test of this unusual tactic, later retired in 1963 as a brigadier general. In his unpublished memoirs, he left a profound thought for posterity. For years, we perfected armor, armament, engines. But a simple sergeant with an art education, using only paint and a napkin, surpassed all our technological advancements by applying psychology. Often the most effective weapon is the one the enemy least expects. Dieckmann's story is just one of many demonstrating the deep shift in thinking that this innovation brought. Captain James Red Holt, the daring pilot who flew that very first decoy mission, subsequently completed 47 more such sorties. He honorably survived the war, credited with 12 confirmed kills and awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Decades later, in 1987, speaking at the Air Force Museum, he shared his thoughts. People often ask me if I was scared flying those decoy missions. You know, every combat mission was terrifying. But this one, I controlled this mission. I wasn't relying on luck, not hoping the Germans would miss. On the contrary, I did everything I could to make sure they saw me. That was the true power. His words underscore not only personal bravery, but also a deep understanding of the new tactic, which was actively championed by one of the legendary commanders. Hub Zemke, a legendary commander who became one of the fiercest advocates and proponents of this unusual tactic, called it the most innovative application of psychological warfare he had ever witnessed in combat. Under his leadership, fighter groups quickly adopted the decoy tactic as standard operating procedure, contributing to its spread throughout the 8th Air Force. However, who was truly behind this ingenious idea that changed the course of the war? And this is where Daniel Weiss enters the scene, a humble Brooklyn artist who unexpectedly became a true tactical revolutionary. For his outstanding service and exceptionally commendable conduct, he was awarded the Legion of Merit. Notably, the citation describing his work remained classified until 1991, with his activity concisely described as the development of advanced camouflage methods. After the war, Weiss requested to be transferred back to his regular duties as a master mechanic and, astonishingly, 3 times refused promotion to officer rank. His modesty and aversion to publicity only emphasized the unusual nature of his contribution. Upon the cessation of hostilities, Weiss returned to his former profession in the advertising industry. He never publicly discussed the decoy program. It wasn't until 1989, when a military historian sought him out, that Daniel Weiss agreed to a short interview. In it, he calmly explained, "I merely found a solution to a visual problem. The Germans were actively looking for damaged aircraft. We simply showed them what they wanted to see: damaged aircraft. There was no particular genius in it. It was just a deep understanding of the difference between what people perceive and what is reality. Advertising taught me that you make people see exactly what you want them to see." When asked if he was proud of his innovation, Weiss replied with his characteristic modesty, "I'm proud that we saved lives. But I'm not proud that such a thing was ever necessary." The false damage program remained classified until 1991, but its lessons were not forgotten. Even today, modern air forces continue to study this case as a textbook example of an asymmetric tactical response. It demonstrates how deception can be used to alter enemy doctrine without requiring technological superiority. The Israeli Air Force successfully employed similar tactics during the 1973 conflict, and the U.S. Navy used decoy ship profiles during the Persian Gulf War. This only confirms the universality and timeless relevance of Weiss's idea, but perhaps the most poignant legacy of this story lies in personal correspondence. However, perhaps the greatest and most poignant legacy of this story came from a completely unexpected source, a personal letter. It was written in June 1945 by a B-17 pilot, Lieutenant Robert McIntyre, and addressed directly to Daniel Weiss. In this letter, Lieutenant McIntyre wrote, "Dear Sergeant Weiss, you don't know me, and I don't know you. But on April 7, 1944, my bomber came under fierce anti-aircraft fire over Magdeburg. We lost 2 engines and were forced to lag behind the main formation. I called for fighter escort with little hope that anyone would come to our aid. But instead, 3 P-47s appeared, masterfully painted to appear as damaged as our aircraft. The Germans, seeing easy prey, rushed to attack. Your fighters were waiting. They shot down 4 of the enemy before the rest hastily retreated. All 10 of our crew members returned home safely. And all of it, thanks to paint, thanks to deception, thanks to someone who understood. Looking weak when you're actually strong is sometimes the best way to be strong. My girlfriend from Baltimore and I are getting married next month. We will have children. They will have their own children. And all of it is thanks to your entirely different approach to camouflage. Perhaps we will never meet, but I wanted you to know. Your idea saved not just planes, it saved a future. Thank you. Lieutenant Robert McIntyre, 300 Key 1st Bomb Group." This invaluable document leads us to the main lesson taught by this remarkable story. Innovations, especially in a field as conservative as military affairs, are rarely born in the minds of those from whom they are traditionally expected. They come from outsiders, from people capable of looking at long-standing problems from an entirely different angle, because their thinking is unburdened by the weight of conventional dogmas and ways of doing things. A commercial artist, Daniel Weiss, looked at aerial combat and saw not just a clash of machines, but a problem of visual deception. While experienced fighter pilots, accustomed to traditional methods, saw only tactical limitations in the same situation, Weiss's genius lay not in technical inventions, but in his unique perceptual approach. He deeply understood that war is not only what actually happens, but to a significant extent, what the enemy believes. The Germans were convinced that damaged aircraft represented easy and vulnerable prey. Weiss managed to turn this conviction into their own fatal weakness. This crucial lesson extends far beyond World War II. In any conflict, whether military or otherwise, the side that effectively controls perception ultimately controls the battlefield. The strongest position doesn't always need to look strong. Sometimes it involves making the enemy believe in your weakness, right up until you're ready to demonstrate otherwise. 40 German fighters fell for this trick, for the painted wounds and theatrical smoke, in just 1 month. They were deceived because they blindly trusted their eyes. And someone who thought outside the box understood that this deeply ingrained belief could be turned into a powerful weapon. This isn't just a tactical innovation. It's a profound understanding of the very essence of conflict. The most dangerous enemy is always the one underestimated. And sometimes the most powerful weapon is just a sketch on a napkin made by someone from whom no one expected any change, any